Ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
Totally.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast. And today I've got myself a grandmaster on the other end of the line. So, Iker, if anybody isn't aware of kind of you and this amazing title that you've got, maybe it's worth just kind of like explaining to the listeners who you are, what you do. We'll come on to grandmastering in a bit, but just kind of like a bit of an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. Thank you very much, James. So, I'm Spanish. I was born in Madrid 33 years ago, almost 34, and I moved to the UK 6 years ago, actually. So I started like my career in 2012 in people, HR, operations type of position, and then slowly I started moving to recruitment, like just by accident. Fell in love a bit of with like the type of work and the operational impact that recruitment had into the business that I was working with. I started specializing like myself more and more into this profession. I joined Hudson RPO in 2015, and is where I discovered the world of sourcing, which up to that moment it was something that I was trying to do by myself when trying to find like some potential candidates that couldn't be found anywhere, but I didn't know exactly what I was doing by then. So when I saw that it was like a specialized sourcing part of recruitment and something like very, very impactful also in the business, I really enjoyed it even much more. And I said, well, this is like what I really like, and having this proactivity. So I've been working after that, like in recruitment agencies, exec search, RPO, again, and in the last 2 years and a half I started my own business where I've been partnering with different companies, both corporates and startups, mainly across tech, but also like other industries as FMCG, and with the main purpose of like giving them support to build sourcing functions, to create a global sourcing strategy. And I think like from all the community around sourcing and things as sourcing games from Jan Texe, by then I got very excited about like participating in competitions around sourcing and a bit of challenge, and that pushed me to the SourceCon Grandmaster.
Um, so do you see sourcing as like a game? Is that kind of how you perceive it? Is
It
that
definitely started for me like well, first of all, like the possibility of providing a service that was transforming how recruitment was done for a particular company, but also like personally, kind of like a game. Yes, that's a good see of a good way of seeing it. Like more like a challenge. I would say like a huge challenge. Where you have like to combine different areas of your brain. You need to be both analytical but also creative, because you need to have like the right mindset to do proper identification of the market and have search results that are going to work for your particular hiring needs, or building a talent map. But also you need to be creative to know how to approach this talent and how to engage, and or come with different solutions when you're not like finding more and more of this type of potential candidates. So kind of like sometimes a wicked game, but yeah, that's a good way of seeing it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought, because the way you describe it, it sounds very much like you mentioned it was a challenge, but I can see how it can become kind of gamified. What I mean, there's something hidden. You've got to find that. I mean, in this case, it's a talent, or
Mhm.
even a person, or whatever, or a CV somewhere. But it's the challenge of finding that needle in the haystack, basically, and you've got this kind of, you've got all your tools. I'm going back to my role playing days. It's basically,
Yeah,
and that's how I'm kind of seeing
totally.
it.
And it can become a bit addictive, because it's like I in some of the recruitment positions that I had initially in my career, we were waiting for candidates, before like being more conscious about like going to the market and attracting this talent, and just like reaching out to people after identifying them in a very structured way, and but then when you discover like this kind of power, and that is not something that it has to be part of a strategy, and it has a methodology that you can use tools and combine them, and it becomes like something like very, very exciting, definitely.
I mean, it sounds more fascinating now that you kind of put it in that sense. Now I can almost identify with it more now that I can think of it as a game.
Totally.
So, I mean, so on the back of that, how do you become a grandmaster?
So as you mentioned, like now, like as part of the game, so I was competing like many times with some of my colleagues in HATS RPO, in the sourcing center of excellence, Florian Bonnet, who is a good friend. We were playing the sourcing games, and then we started seeing like some competitions. At some point, in one of the first sourcing summits, there was like a hackathon. I decided to participate. I won it, and then I said, well, this is like a super nice way, not only of like getting some exposure, but like to learn actually by participating in these competitions and in these contests, and seeing like what other people are doing, what the strategies they have been using. So it's by playing, as you mentioned, both like from the sourcing games from Yantex to all these hackathons that have been also like something like more common. You learn a lot about like your limitations, or about ways of doing things that maybe you will need at some point in the future if you're changing to a different market, if you're recruiting a new role that is using like a platform that you never heard before. So I think it keeps you active, and this led to participating in the Sourcing Grandmaster. That is I think the most important competition, globally recognized. When I heard first about SourceCon in 2015, I saw, well, not only like the huge impact like that it has in the sourcing community, like not only through the blog and the events, but also like all these persons that are there and building this and I say, well, I need to give it a try. I want to be part of that. And I saw it like as a nice challenge, because like the majority of people that has won this challenge are from the US. There's also, well, Catherine Robinson, she's based in the UK. The sorceress, she's amazing. And I say, well, why not be like the first non-native English speaker as a Spanish person winning this, because also the language is also like a big barrier sometimes, as you can see. So why not like taking this like to another step and force myself to complete this. I had one attempt, I didn't won, and the year after I said, okay, this year I need to do something. My now great friend now Cindy Davis won it before. I say now I need to do this, and I need to bring it back to Europe, and that's what I did.
It's kind of like the Ryder Cup.
kind of like it's this motivation of showing, like, because I mean, sourcing in Europe is they're like amazing sourcers, but traditionally, like at least maybe like 5 years ago when I started seeing this, a lot of the events aside from Sourcing Summit, for example, SourceCon was only in the US. And like some of the big names and the persons that were always like sharing tools and knowledge, they were mainly based there, aside from some people like Catherine Robinson, for example, and of course Jan Tex and others. So I say, okay, well, there is like a huge community here also in Europe. So I think we had like also this a bit of a fight with somebody like Guillaume Alexander, for example, that has been like doing a lot for the sourcing community in Europe, and he also like was in the top 3 of this competition. So a bit of like a geographical competition.
A bit of competition between us and the United States.
Totally.
So take me through how that works, because I mean, I assume they kind of set up a series of challenges and but give us some examples of the things you had to do to become the kind of grandmaster.
Yes, so it's basically you get like 2 stages where you are competing against like hundreds of persons in the first round, and you need to be the best in answering a few questions in a short period of time. Again, from year to year, this might change. So in my case, that was like the pressure that I had was like the time and to be able to answer like as many questions as possible. And this is, in this case, was very linked to things that you can find in the sourcing games. So I think that helped me a lot again, playing those, but also like to think out of the box of like, okay, so how we're looking for this part of the information, scenarios that are very linked to recruitment across, maybe you haven't seen that specific platform, or you don't know exactly how to perform that search, but you need to very quickly adapt. And I think that's part of sourcing in many cases, particularly when you are switching from one geography to another, from one role to a different function. You need to understand how to be quick, no, to learn things and to move forward, no. And then a final stage where you have like the top 10 of this initial part, where you must dedicate like out of hours to be able to answer like also, or to solve a challenge, no. And it can be like some kinds like kind of like a puzzle almost, again dedicated to link it to sourcing and candidate hiring, but also like to understanding, like for example, things that maybe are not so common for you. So you might get like in some cases stuck in some of the levels when you're trying to go ahead, and the only way for you to move forward is like to stop and reframe, no. And I think that I failed, like actually in the first time that I tried, and I failed so many times when playing the sourcing games, because you need to sometimes like reposition your thinking, and it's not always possible, no. You can always go through the rabbit hole and be stuck in one answer to a specific question. And sourcing very much in many cases is about like of again thinking in a creative way. So taking out your analytical insights and power in that sense, and then say, okay, so how I could do this differently, no? And it's a combination that it always doesn't come easily.
So, and also the kind of the big question is do you get a trophy?
Yes, I had a trophy. I think it's they gave this to me in Amsterdam in the last European conference that we were able to do before.
Amazing.
It's a scroll. It has lights and everything, but I will need to connect it.
That's cool. Yeah.
I have it here in front of me. So I think for me I was competing against myself. I want to prove to myself that I was able to do that. Particularly because I failed the first time, so I said, okay, I need to make a difference, and you learn a lot through the way. So that's I think that's the main interest of this. No, it doesn't change after much.
And what were the kind of takeaways from it? Did it kind of help you be a better sourcer, kind of post kind of becoming the grandmaster? And I mean, did it bring in more work as well? Was it kind of, did it generate revenue? And what was kind of the knock-on effects?
No, I wouldn't say like directly it generated revenue for me. I will say that maybe like some more exposure for sure, like some more people can love you or hate you because of that. And some people maybe are expecting things that, I don't know, that because of you arrive there and they think that you should be like doing things for some reason. But aside from that, for me, again, it was like more kind of like a personal challenge. Of course, like I think it's good for the community to be representing like Europe, and somebody that hasn't won that, that has been able to won that without being an English native speaker. I think it's something that I'm very proud. Takeaways, again, like through this challenge always, and it happened to me before in others, you learn to reframe your mind very often, which is something that happens when you're sourcing, that you can get stuck on a search again and again. You can get used to using like one tool or one combination of tools that have been working before, but you need always to refresh. I think that's it's very easy to to lose that, I think. And it's an amazing reminder when you're playing these games to try to rethink your strategy, try to go through things that you have to be exhaustive at the same time, but also exhaustive in a way that you're discovering more levels of things that you could apply and do. No, so I think that's the main.
And do you get a chance to go back and defend your title, or I mean, how does that work?
No, I think like before you were able to compete again. Jim Schneider, who's amazing, he won it twice.
Yeah.
But if I'm not wrong, unless they change this, I haven't been like participating in the last one. You get to work a little bit building the next contest. I remember I sent a few questions. I think it was like for last year, but then you're not able like to compete again at the same time. So
okay. Okay. Oh, so but you do get to set the questions as well.
Yes, you can send a few questions if you're helping. Like there's like an amazing team of organizers, and many of the previous winners of the SourceCon are also sending some questions. Other people around. So it depends on, again, this is completely for free volunteering, and it depends on the time that you have. But I think I will say that I think after you can become almost like an addict of trying to win these kind of things. I won a few. I proved to myself a few things. I think I don't need to prove to anybody else what I can do. So I took like some time to be more in the other side, no, and let others participate. I don't know if I will be able to win it again, to be honest. Maybe yes, maybe not. But I did it, so that's what it matters.
Yeah, you've always got that title now. You're always going to be a grandmaster, basically, at this point.
Yes, it's not easy to get it, so I think that's I'm trying to focus in other things now. But it's a very important experience, and I know that sometimes people can see it as like just like a game, or as you mentioned, like a game, but in a way that says, well, it's just a game, or you can say, well, it's a game, and you can learn a lot from it, and you can apply and test yourself and learn through the way, you know. And I think that's what is important, no, from this and what you can do. So I encourage everybody to try to participate, no matter the result. I think it helps.
So let's hear what. Let's move on to kind of some of the details
totally.
around being a sourcer. And I'm interested in knowing a bit more about kind of how you go about it, and a little bit more about the kind of technology, the tools, and the techniques that you use kind of on a daily basis. Obviously, you don't have to give away any of your secrets. If there are any kind of, I mean, and that's another good question. I mean, is there a dark art behind this now? I mean, or can kind of anyone just kind of, have a go at this, and who's maybe recruiting now, want to move into sourcing like you did, where do they start? But let's start with the technology and the tools that you use, and then we'll kind of maybe come back to that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And for me, and again, going through this learning that, again, sourcing games from Gentex helped a lot. I started seeing that only one tool is not going to be the solution for your sourcing problem. So you can have like so many cool tools. Sometimes you're going to be able to use them depending on the setup of your company. Sometimes it's going to be impossible. Your data team, legal team is going to be saying, no, it's not something that you can use because of this or that. So I came to the conclusion that at the end, what matters most is like being able to have like a sourcing mindset. No, it's like, and this is like to know how to discover new tools. There are people often creating lists of many of the tools. Some of the inspiration that you can use sometimes can become from marketeers, for example, that are using a tool. Imagine like when Loom video recording was used to send messages. So somebody takes that and say, okay, why we don't apply that to a candidate reach out, no, and we engage somebody with this, no. So it's more about like saying, okay, two things, like, can I use this for my recruitment, my sourcing purpose, like for identifying somebody or to engage with somebody or to be more productive when working. That's the three areas that I try to put everything under that. And or can you, for example, combine this tool with something else and make it like a sourcing tool. So examples like to do this. So you can get like a email marketing automation, like to build campaigns, like Lemlist or Mixmax, and you can say, okay, so I'm going to use this to send like a few messages, and so I don't need to do like manually the follow-ups, and I can invest more time in engaging with the candidates in different touch points, going through different platforms and connecting them with them there, like having like a cadence, for example. And that's how you combine, no, the strategy with the tools. I think that's the key to do this, no. I normally I'm saying this a lot, that you can, for example, start or end your search on LinkedIn, which is one of the main tools for many well, professionals, but particularly for recruiters. But it doesn't mean that you have to rely only on LinkedIn, no? So many of the projects that I've done, maybe I was starting an initial search on LinkedIn, and then I was going through other social professional networks like Sing, for example, to check people in Germany. Maybe I was using like a Stack Overflow or GitHub to see more information about this profile, checking Twitter. Or sometimes I was starting, for example, in a meetup group, extracting data from that meetup group and cross-referencing that on LinkedIn, no? So again, this is always going back to this principle that I think is very important. Like, you can have like your toolbox and how you combine it, no? Sometimes like Chrome extensions, for example, I used to have like hundreds of Chrome extensions. Now I have like my Chrome extension manager. Sometimes I activate one or two, sometimes I don't. Like, for example, I can activate like a auto-pagarize when I have like a list of emails that I'm trying to, or a list of companies, for example, no, that I want to go to the bottom, and then I have another extension like data scraper to take it out, no? But I don't have it like all the time, and it's not all my. I wouldn't say that tools define my work. I would say that tools combined can have like some effect on my work, no? Which is what I try to do. So, and they come and go, to be honest, like many of them. So you need to be prepared. It's impossible to track them all, and there are people that are doing an amazing job with that. But you can get like in some cases like in Product Hunt and Delify, how do you say, Delify and AppSumo, for example. You can say, oh, I'm going to buy like so many deals, and some of these at some point I saw that I was not using them because it wasn't possible. So again, it's like it's the value, like the combination, and if it's going to be adapted to that context, no? So I think that's very important, no?
And how does someone move from kind of recruiting into sourcing? I mean, I suppose that's twofold. Is one, what's the difference? And next is, how does one move from one to the other? You know what I mean?
Yes, good question. Yeah, so I think like in my case was, again, a bit of an accident of being like more into recruitment, as I mentioned before. I think many companies have always had this kind of like understanding and division between being a recruiter, or in the agency world, for example, to be a recruitment consultant, and then you have your resourcer, researcher, a delivery consultant, or sourcer, that is the person that is just feeding you candidates, and in many cases was seen like as something like more junior. I think this, even if it still happens in some companies, it has changed a lot.
Is that maybe what would be called a resourcer?
Yes, like resourcer, researcher, depending on like some of the specific of what this person is doing and the setup. Like as it happens with many other professions, these terms are exchanged independently, you know. So depending on the company. So I think like being able like to see that it's not just like a junior position helped me a lot to transition, because when I started, and one of my main tasks was like to be able to generate candidates, and I saw that it was almost like lead generation for when you're building campaigns in marketing, or when you
Yeah.
have like it's like, okay, so you're having like a clear impact here. You're being proactive. You're not waiting for people to apply, and that's the combination of having like a to be like so analytical to understand like properly the market, and or to craft a strategy, but also at the same time like having to be creative again to see, okay, what new platforms or venues I'm going to be using, how I'm going to approach this person, is there another way of doing things. And that's for me what makes you think. No, I think recruiters like often, and I've been like a recruiter, I've been doing like campaigns end to end, full cycle. They are the persons that are amazing also, and very focused, like almost like big project managers that have this the necessity of filling a vacancy for a part of the business.
Yeah.
And for them it's like they want to transform, no, like getting like candidates no matter what. And the hiring manager, for example, in many cases they're not like into how you're getting the candidates. They don't care if it's like an active or a passive candidate. They want to hire that person. That's why they are hiring managers. And recruiters, they might make sure that this happens. While sourcers, at the end, what we want to make sure is that you are able to put in front of the business people that will never think about applying to your company before. And is that transformation, is that conversion from that's converting a lead into a prospect, into a candidate. That's what changes enormously, which many recruiters they do, and they are amazing. You don't need to be only focused in sourcing. In many companies, when you're doing full cycle, a big part of your job is being an amazing sourcer. But some companies and some even like some agencies have been able to have like a dedicated teams that are focused also only in the outbound, no, in generating these leads, in creating these prospects, which is a big game changer.
Yeah. So interesting enough, you've touched on marketing a couple of times, and you've mentioned it in marketing as well. And I know you've got a bit of an interest in kind of marketing as well. So what's the crossover between sourcing and marketing these days? I mean, is there a crossover?
Totally, I think there is, and as I mentioned, like not only because of the tools, and again, I've been trying like to add more and more concepts as I've been like knowing. I'm not an expert in marketing or anything like that, and there are people in the sourcing community which are amazing. I would say like growth hackers, definitely, because and they years ago they came with this, but like seeing things of like email automation, for example, these kind of concepts are very very relevant in that sense. So not only like combining like the tools, which is what I just touched, but also everything related to working with marketing teams when creating the right type of content that you are also going to be using when you are going to the market. No? So in some of the projects that I've done, I think it has been like very important to be working, no, with marketeers that maybe had the knowledge of like how to approach a community, for example, and me like helping them to say, okay, we're going to target this segment because this is like the type of profile that we're going to be having right now or in the next 6 months. So it's more about like a huge cooperation, no?
Yeah. So I mean, I like the idea, and it's kind of like the same side. It's a different side of the same coin as kind of account-based marketing, because you know ABM is much kind of focused on kind of client side, and then I mean, I suppose you could call it source marketing on the other side, which is directed at the kind of prospective applicants. And I think it's an area that really hasn't been touched on a huge amount by recruiters and by kind of businesses as well, that kind of side of it and how you can use marketing as an effective sourcing tool. I think there's area for scope in that.
Totally, I think like some companies are very fortunate because they have like employer branding teams and they have like sourcing teams, and if they work together, the difference that they can do is massive, because you will have like a team that is positioning your employer brand, and I will have all the knowledge and all the support to do that. And at the same time, you have a team of sourcers that is able to leverage that content, for example, or to help you in creating communities or in events, for example, targeting the people that you're after. No, so under like a talent acquisition teams, for example, where this is combined, I think it makes a huge difference. Yes.
So kind of onto my final point, and maybe kind of source marketing is part of this. Is what's the future for when it comes to kind of sourcing? Where's it heading? Is it going to be? Is it technology driven? Is it methodology driven? Is it cooperation with other parts of the business driven? Where do you see it going?
Yes, good question, James. So I think like it's definitely like in part of the cooperation. No, I think like sometimes you can see that these teams are not speaking together, and they're working for the same goal at the end. No, they want to bring more candidates to the business, or showing like the brand of one company for people that maybe are not aware of this brand at all. So I think it's a combined effort, and it's part of like the cooperation. No, and it's like, okay, how you can think about like using, like, maybe marketing team has a budget for some tools that could be leveraged by the sourcing team. Maybe they have like the ability of building, as I mentioned, like they have a CRM, for example, and your sourcing team doesn't have a CRM yet. So can you combine this and make sure that the CRM that the marketing team is using for careers and employer branding is going to be leveraged also by the sourcing team, things like that. So definitely I can see a crossover, no, and everything related to talent pipelines, no, and generation of like building these talent pipelines. I think like well, Candidate ID, Adam Gordon, Billy, they have done an amazing work with the tool, and it's a bit of a combination of both worlds, no? So at different scales, like many teams and smaller or bigger, they can do this also. They can work coordinated, and they can generate also a lot of value in that sense. And even in agencies, no, where sometimes it's not like so common, no. I think like content marketing also, recruiters, sourcers, we are not like always trained to be the best creators of content. So why we don't leverage the content that the marketing team or the experts that the marketing team might have, and combine it, no? So
Iker, that has been absolutely fascinating. We will include all your kind of all your details in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get in contact with you, they can.
Thank you.
And I urge people to, because it's not often you can get a grandmaster kind of working for you. So I urge everybody to go do that. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure. Much appreciated. I really enjoyed discussing with you.